Hello and welcome to Barnard Career Development. I'm Christine Valenza Shin. I'm the alumni counselor here and also a fellow alumni, class of '84. Welcome back to those of you who have been here for the whole series or for part of the series, and welcome to those of you who are just joining us for today's session on negotiating the job offer and managing your ongoing professional development. We've come to the end of the webinar series as well as the end of theoretically the job hunt process or the career transition process. And today we have a positive topic, which is it's based on the premise that you've actually been offered a job or started a new job. And we're going to look at some guidelines for that type of thing. So welcome, as I said, and if you have any questions along the way, use the question function on your menu or pop-up window. And feel free to say hello right now. Maybe let me know your class year and what city you're in, and I'll share a little information with the group. Make sure you all can hear me. (1973) New York City. Okay, well, let's get started. It doesn't sound like a lot of you are out there yet, but hopefully more people will come in. So the title of today's session is Know and Grow Your Worth. And those are the two sections we're going to look at. We're going to look at knowing your worth, which is the premise on which we're going to base our understanding of how to negotiate, and then growing your worth. Once you're in your new position, how can you expand your skills, expand your value to the organization? So we're going to look at several steps in successfully negotiating your job offer. Researching salary ranges, answering salary requirements early in the process. This is something that's happening more and more frequently. Negotiating salary once an offer is made to you. Negotiating other benefits and perks. Money isn't the only thing to negotiate. Negotiating raises and promotions once you're in the job. We want to give a little foreshadowing to that. And that's what we'll cover today. Sorry, my phone is ringing. They should know better than to do that. That distracted me. Okay, so let's get started on salary research. The more information, this is probably one of the most fundamental, it's the fundamental thing about negotiating. It's the starting point for most of what we're going to talk about today. The more information you can get about what people make in similar positions in the company and or the industry you're looking at, the better. Knowledge is truly power here, because you want to negotiate based on the market rate for your job in your area, in a particular company or in a particular field. And if you can get that information, that makes it so much easier to negotiate. Where can you find that out? There's a lot of online information. I've listed some of them here. Glassdoor.com is probably the most popular of these. It's a lot of these are based on sort of crowdsourcing. You know, people are invited to share information about how much they make, where they work, what their title is, what their experience is, etc. There's salary.com, payscale.com. Payscale, I think, is the one where some of them you actually have to fill out a profile first. Most of them ask for at least name and email, and then they give you a certain amount of access. And then if you want more detail and more access, they ask you to pay. Completely up to you whether to do so, depending on your needs. I want to put in a particular plug for nonprofitstaffing.com. This is a really comprehensive salary job reports. They come out with it annually. They just came out with their 2015 report in February. It's quite a lot of detailed information about both salary and just sort of information in general about the nonprofit world. And they started expanding the number of cities they cover. So it used to be just a New York report. Now there's New York, Washington, Philadelphia, and I think some other cities are being added to it. So it's a very helpful report if you are in the nonprofit world. And then in our virtual library on our Barnard Career Development site, we have a list that includes some of these same salaries, but some more specific finders as well. You want to check more than one of these. You're not always going to get full information, different ranges. Things could be a little bit, sometimes as you check more than one site, it becomes clear what the actual range is. Sometimes it's still a little all over the map. So, take the information with a grain of salt, but it's not a bad starting point. And then your best source is actual people working for the company or working in the position in your company or working in a position in a similar company in the same area. So as you are having informational interviews or networking interviews, try and work in a question about salary. And it does not obviously have to be the blunt, how much do you make, which can be hard to ask and can be very off-putting to people, although there's some people who are very comfortable talking about money. And, if you find one of those people, by all means, get as much info from them as you can. But it's very easy to ask in a diplomatic way, just if you've been talking about a particular level or something, say, do you have a sense of what the salary range is for that? And some people will have a very clear sense. Some people have no idea. But that's an open-ended enough question that people will be able to give you an answer to it without causing undue discomfort. There's a lot of weirdness about talking around money in our culture and many cultures. So keep that in mind, but don't be afraid to push yourself outside your comfort zone a little bit, as long as you do it diplomatically. And then probably one of the best sources for salary information is to ask a trusted connection to do some digging for you. So these are people that you know well, former colleagues, good friends. They may know someone who can do some digging. And it's interesting, once you're sort of once removed, it can sometimes make it easier. So I'll get a call occasionally or an email from people asking about salaries at Barnard. And salaries at Barnard, actually, it's interesting, they're not really codified. They really do vary from department to department. So if it's not on my behalf, it's actually, I'm really comfortable calling up someone, or shooting an email to someone and saying, hey, do you know how much they're asking for this position or planning on paying for this position? So don't overlook that. It's a good resource to sort of get someone to do some digging for you, or to get someone who knows someone to do some digging for you. General negotiating principles. Right. So once you have a sense and have done some research, what are some general negotiating principles you need to know? One thing is you want to try to get the other side to name a number first. Of course, if they're good negotiators, they're doing the same thing too. So we'll talk a little bit about strategy for that in a moment. And the other key thing to know going in is your walkaway point. What is the lowest acceptable salary to you? So again, based on your research, or as we'll talk about, if you haven't been able to find out a lot of information about a specific salary, you still need to have a lowest possible number in mind. And that's helpful to know. It's not so much that you're going to share that information, but just go in knowing that, and it reminds yourself that you can walk away from a negotiation if it doesn't meet your needs, then you may have to turn them down. But you also want to stay flexible and use your judgment throughout the process. We're going to talk about a couple techniques, and my word of caution comes, sometimes I've worked with alumni, it's a certain personality type that is looking for rules and procedures, and they can sometimes get a little too rigid in this. And so if you're that type of person who's a little rigid, who has a little trouble going with the flow, I caution you, there's no predetermined script for this. It's a give and take. These are conversations that could take place in person, over the phone, or over email, and you have to be a little bit flexible. And if that's not your natural state, I'm happy to help coach you on that a little bit. Okay. All right, we'll get back to that first point, try and get the other side to name a number. Okay, so naming a number. If you have a highly educated guess on the range being offered, name a number at the top or slightly above the range. So let's say a combination of your online and in-person research has made you fairly certain that a job is paying between 70 and 75,000. Then and you feel that you meet the qualifications and perhaps you're even overqualified in some areas, then I would put your range, I would name your range as 75 to 77 or 77 to 79. You want to overshoot it a little because you want to leave some room in the negotiating for coming down. And if you're lucky and you get someone who's not very good at negotiating or who has more money than you might have thought available to them, you may end up actually with the 77 or the 79 or even the 80, and that would be great. If you're less certain of the range, maybe it's a little bit of wider range, or maybe you've sort of got conflicting reports, go for the middle. Okay, you could again name a specific number. So if they, in the example I gave, if you have a sense that it's paying somewhere between 65 and 75, you could go for 70, or you could go for 70 to 72, right? Somewhere in there. You want to pay attention to their response. The number they come back with can provide clues as to the range they have in mind. So if they come back with a much lower number, that could mean that you overshot a little, or it could mean that they're just negotiating aggressively and trying to get you down. So you have to kind of think carefully. So you say 70 and they come back with 60. That could mean that you've overshot, but you have to kind of test that with your next one. So you could come back and say, I really was hoping for the high 60s to low 70s, so how about 68? And then you see what happens from there. As I said, there's no single script or recipe for this. There's a little bit of give and take, but I've done quite a bit of this. You know, I probably coach someone through negotiating at least once a month. So I've gathered quite a bit of sort of anecdotal evidence. So especially if it's happening by email, you can share the emails with me and I can give you sort of my expertise, such as it is on reading the tone and getting a sense of where they might be headed. If you're very uncertain of what others are being paid, you've been able to dig up very little information, you can work from your salary at your past or current job, but a couple rules here. You want to ask for more than you currently make. Unless you're taking an obvious step down to a lower level, or say moving from for-profit to nonprofit, you want to try and increase your salary as you make a job move. Okay. And again, you want to pay attention to their response and respond accordingly. And then just to go back to this concept of naming a number and getting them to name it first. The important thing here, even if you have a pretty good sense, it actually is a good idea to try and get them to say, and so a simple way is if you are asked, let's say in person, what salary are you looking for? Your first response should be, what does this position pay? Or what has this position paid in the past? Or what are your plans for how much to pay for this position? And they may try and wiggle out of that, and that's fine. You don't want to make a big deal out of it, but they may answer you. They may say, well, we were looking, we're, in the past have paid, between 60 and 65 for this position, or they might name a very specific number. And what's helpful there is you may have been underselling yourself, or you may have gotten information that led you to believe it was lower than what they're saying. So you should always go, if they come up with a number that's higher than what you were thinking, definitely go with that. Don't stick to your lower expectations. If they come in lower, it could mean that your information was a little bit off, but it also could mean that they're lowballing you a little. So, so again, I keep saying the same thing. There's no one script to this, but there's different ways this can play out, and we'll continue to talk about sort of general approaches, general strategies to this, and then I'm happy to work with you on your individual negotiation. Now, during the application process, you can be asked what your salary requirements are. This is coming up more and more frequently, especially in online applications, but sometimes you're asked to put this into your cover letter. You want to try not to name a number early on, and the reason for this is simply that you have the most power when they offer you the job. until they offer you the job, you don't have much power. So you want to try and put off specific discussions of salary until then. However, sometimes it's not optional. Sometimes you do have to put down a number, and we want to talk about a couple strategies for that. If you're asked to identify your salary needs in an online application, you want to name a number or range if required. And here you're going to make your best guess based on your research. If text is allowed, write in flexible instead or in addition to a range or number. So you could, for instance, sticking to our, well, let's jump up the salary. I've negotiated some people looking at six-figure stuff. So let's say your research tells you it's going to be around 120,000 for this position. So you could write in a range, 120 to 130, but I'm flexible. Okay. If text is not allowed, sometimes you simply have to enter a number. Use the next available text box to state your flexibility on salary. So let's say they'll only accept a number. You can go ahead and put in a number or a range if you're allowed to type that in. And then the next text box that comes up, you could simply say, on salary, it's important for you to know that I'm flexible on salary. I'll come to why you want to keep using this flexible in a moment, right? Sometimes during the interview process, you're asked to identify salary needs during the interview process. Say that you prefer to discuss salary once you have been offered the job. That's a nice confident statement. If pressed, say your requirements are flexible. If pressed further, name a range, but add that you are flexible. Why do you keep saying flexible at this stage? A lot of people think that weakens their case, but it doesn't in this sense. The idea is to keep your options open until the final negotiation, once you've been offered the job, once you have the power. So in other words, saying you're flexible does not mean you'll take anything. Saying you're flexible does not mean that you're not going to negotiate and negotiate assertively at the time that you're actually discussing salary. In fact, it sets you up for being able to discuss this more specifically later on. And I want to say a word, this isn't the company or organization that's asking this information, they're not asking this so much as a negotiation tactic. It's a very common question because they're trying to weed out candidates who have too high a salary expectation. So a lot of people don't do salary research and they simply work from what they would like to be paid or from what they're currently being paid without giving any consideration to the fact that this job or organization or field might pay lower. And that's what they're trying to weed out, is people who've been making a lot in a certain sector and now they're moving sectors and aren't aware that this sector doesn't pay as much or nonprofit doesn't tend to pay as much as for-profit, etc. So it's a legitimate question on their part. It just makes it, it can make it uncomfortable for you. So that's how you want to approach it. Flexibility is the key, right? Once the offer is made, things change. This is the first time in the process that you have the power. So now instead of you saying, please hire me, keep moving me along, now they want to hire you. They have chosen you, and they are highly unlikely to withdraw the offer. I have never heard of an offer being withdrawn because someone tried to negotiate. Negotiation is a normal part of the hiring process in many industries, not all, but many industries. That doesn't mean everyone's comfortable with it. And that includes both you and the person on the other side. Sometimes managers in a particular department are not particularly comfortable with the concept of negotiating. They're just as uncomfortable and awkward about it as you are. Sometimes even HR people who presumably have some training and experience can just not be particularly good negotiators and just aren't that comfortable with it. So don't assume that any discomfort you're feeling is just from you. But you do want to negotiate and you want to try and get a little bit more comfortable with it. Do always try to negotiate, even if briefly. It may be a simple, they say the salary is 80,000 and you say, oh, I was hoping for closer to 90,000, and their immediate response may be, nope, the salary is set, we don't have any wiggle room. They may come down very firmly, and so then that's it. But at least you tried, at least you attempted to sort of test the waters, and that's a good thing. One key thing I've been stressing with some of our young alumni, I had a series of people who were so excited when they finally got the offer that they said yes over the phone. Do not say yes right away to the offer, no matter how thrilled you are. Tell them you're thrilled. I'm so excited to hear that. That's wonderful news, to get an offer from such a great organization. Your next question is, will you be sending me a written offer with details about, salary and benefits? It's a written offer is customary. You should expect that. Sometimes they want to talk through salary first. Other times they'll just send you sort of their opening gambit. Okay. Whether they want to talk over the phone right in that moment, or whether you're waiting for something in writing, it is fine to take 1 to 2 days to consider once you've received it. And you just tell them that and say, I'm so excited. Couldn't be more thrilled to have the offer made. I'll wait for your email, and then I'll let you know the next day. Right? And now is the time to do some more research. Now you have a specific offer on the table, and you want to circle back and get advice. Could be from me, could be from your friend who connected you to the job in the first place. And in this situation, if something's very time sensitive, I'm inviting you to email me directly, and I'll fit you into my schedule, because it's usually only like a 10-15 minute conversation. I'll just usually have you fill me in on where you're at, what you said, what they said, and we'll sort of strategize from there. You could do the same with anybody who's been advising you, or if you have any inside connections to a company. Ending the negotiation. Whoops. Don't go too many rounds. You want to read the room and use your best judgment as to how it is going and where things are likely to settle. I have friends who, at the same time we were moving into our house in the suburbs, were also moving in. And it just became very clear after maybe 2 rounds of working through the broker to settle on a price for the house. It became very clear that they were going to meet in the middle. And so at one point our friends just said, all right, clearly we're heading for whatever the number was. Let's just jump ahead to that. Negotiation doesn't have to be prolonged. You don't have to keep going up and down by increments, as long as if it should start to become clear where things are heading, and it's fine to cut to the chase. If it's clear that you're not going to win this, let's say you are asking for 90 and they are coming up in just tiny increments, and maybe you've gotten to 81 or 81.5 or maybe 82, and they're not going to meet you in the middle or even close to where you want. You need to concede gracefully. If it becomes clear it's not going your way and they're not going to budge on salary, if you can't concede gracefully, don't take the job. All right. If it really is too low, or you feel like that they're playing hardball, or that they're not respecting your experience, if you can't concede gracefully on salary and it's going to bug you, my advice is not to take the job. But absolutely talk to me if this is how things are going, because we can talk it through and decide. Because sometimes you will agree to a lower salary than you hoped for, because there's other compelling reasons to take the job. It could be your own financial situation. It could be that it's a great company, great opportunity, and interesting position. And so it's worth taking a slightly lower salary than you were hoping for, in exchange for those benefits. But it's your choice. You don't have to take the job. Sometimes you have to take the job, but ultimately. If it's clear, or if it becomes clear that the salary is non-negotiable, consider what else you value and ask for it. And actually, this is a great, even if you might even know going in that the salary is not very negotiable, but you've made the attempt, the very act of asking for more and then them turning you down is a little power move, because now they've turned you down on something. So now is a good time to come back with other things you might really want. What are some of these things? The start date. Right? Start date becomes very important after this long process, often long process of interviewing and going through. Companies, organizations almost always want you to start as soon as possible, and that's not always good for you. So I really strongly encourage you, even if you did get the money you want, to negotiate a little bit harder on the start date. Obviously, most people won't give notice at their current job until they've got an offer in hand. And so the standard minimum is 2 weeks notice to your current job. And so then often the new company will say, okay, so if you give 2 weeks notice, then you'll be ready to start the following Monday. And you want to say, no, actually, I would like to give longer notice to my company. I'm in an important position. I need to be able to transition a new person into it. So I'd really actually like to be able to give them a month's notice. Or you can simply say, actually, I'd prefer to start, and then you give a date. So let's say you were in the middle of a negotiation right now, and they say, great, so you could start on March 20th. And you say, actually, it'd be much better for me to start on April 5th. I'm not looking at my calendar. I don't know if these are Mondays or Saturdays, but you'll bear with me here. A week or two is not going to make a huge difference to them, and it could make a huge difference to you. A little bit of extra time to leave your other job, and I would advocate for taking a break. I love people to have at least a week between finishing the old job and starting the new job. And in the current climate, very often you're not going to get a vacation at the new job for, as you know, it could be up to 3 months or 6 months. Sometimes it's even longer. So really try and get a week's buffer. And again, talk to me about this. I can help sort of coach you through it. So I strongly encourage you to negotiate the start date. And the rules are the same, similar principles. Ask for further out than you want, and then you maybe can settle on something. So say, yeah, I really would love to start 6 weeks from now. And then they say 6 weeks, that's ridiculous. How about 3 weeks or 4 weeks? And then you might settle on something like that. Moving expenses, if you are moving to a new area, that's something sometimes they'll offer, sometimes you can ask for. Additional vacation or sick days. I had somebody who was transitioning a couple years ago from a traditional brick and mortar publishing job into digital publishing, and she got a little bit of a salary bump, but not as much as she wanted. But she pressed hard on vacation and sick days because the new company wasn't offering as many, and she actually ended up getting some additional days. I think she might have ended up with as many as 4 or 5 additional days, which is great. So that's a good thing to ask about. A lot of places have a signing or performance bonus. This is most common in sort of traditional financial fields, but I've heard about bonuses from all sorts of organizations. So it's definitely something to ask about. Sometimes if they're not willing to give you a lot on salary, they will offer a performance bonus, and that can be helpful. And then sometimes, especially if they're saying, oh, we'd love to pay more, but we can't, you're untested, or we're not sure about funding, etc., in a startup situation or a nonprofit situation. And one of the things you could ask for is say, okay, it's lower than I expected or lower than I was hoping for, but if you're willing to sit down with me in 6 months to review my salary and talk about an increase at that point, that can be a good tactic. And then you use those 6 months to a year to show them how valuable you are and how good. And then they know a lot more about you, and they may be more willing to meet you and give you a bump up. Working from home or flexible hours is another thing to consider. A lot of places, again, won't want to negotiate on this until you've started. Some places say you have to work sort of on site for, even places that are flexible about this will say we need you to be on site for at least 3 months or 6 months, because they need to get to know you and understand your work patterns and how reliable you are, and then you're able to. Okay. Support staff, if you're being asked to do a lot and they're not giving you a lot of salary, you could check out whether it's possible to have a support person or part of a support person. And also a good opportunity if they're not paying a ton of salary, if there's maybe any training or conference opportunities. A lot of places, this is particularly true of nonprofits, but I think it's true in the for-profit sector as well. They may not have a lot of money in their salary line. They may be restricted in that area, but they can, they have room in their professional development line. And so that's why you want to ask about something like this. And finally, we want to look at future opportunities to negotiate. Negotiation is not over just because you've settled this one time, which doesn't mean you're constantly negotiating. For those of you, I don't want to give bad news to those of you, but also if you're feeling a little like, oh, maybe I didn't negotiate as well as I could, or you find out later that they actually probably could have paid you more, you will have future opportunities to negotiate. You want to educate yourself either via human resources or your manager about what is the process for raises and bonuses, and what is the performance review schedule and process. Now, the answer to this question, especially in some small nonprofits and small companies, is there is no process for raises and bonuses. Or I've heard from a lot of alumni where they work for a place or a manager who doesn't do performance reviews and process. And so that's a whole other thing. You may have to be proactive on this, take the initiative on it. All right, but they may have an existing process. It's good to know what it is. You want to gather salary information as opportunities arise. This doesn't mean on your first day there that you quiz everyone about how much they're making, but you may have the opportunity to find out from some of your new coworkers or some of your not so new coworkers as the months and years go by. You might catch some salary information, and that's always helpful. You want to be discreet, as some workplaces discourage this type of communication. They're not allowed to. It's illegal to ban people from talking about money, but companies try and do it anyway. So use your discretion. And then ask for other perks or benefits, similar to what we were looking at before. Title bump, especially if you are doing additional work. So this is a classic thing. It's called job creep. Used to happen a lot in nonprofit. Now I'd say since the recession, it sort of happens across the board. Someone leaves and they either don't hire someone new or they take a long time hiring someone new. And in the meantime, they say, could you do X, Y, and Z in addition to what you're already doing? And that's fine to agree to that in the short term. But if this is going to become a permanent part of your job, or if it goes on for several months, you could ask for a title bump in order to encompass the new part of what you're doing. Okay. You could ask for a new desk, computer, or other equipment. Again, a lot of companies and organizations, they may not have room in the salary line, but they may have room in their furniture or equipment line. And if you can get a desk or a computer or some other piece of equipment that's going to make your job easier, make you happier, that's a great thing to ask for. Support staff, especially if you're doing additional work. So if they ask you to take on something new, especially something higher level, and you still have responsibility for, I don't know, the weekly report or such and such news, some other thing that either you don't love or is time consuming or is kind of lower level, then ask if you can have someone help you do that part of it, or can that part of it be shifted to someone else, okay? And professional development opportunities. There's trainings, there's conferences, and again, that's a great thing to ask for. It's going to help you do your job better, which is going to help them. And it's also something you can add to your resume, your LinkedIn profile. It's part of your professional development. So these are all things that you can negotiate on in addition to or instead of negotiating salary. So just to sum up, this first half of the webinar here, successfully negotiating your job offer. Knowledge is power. You want to know your worth and ask to be paid what you are worth. Women are traditionally not very good at this. There's been a ton of research and literature about this in recent years. Definitely take a look at it. But you want to become one of the people. You're entitled to know what the job pays and to be paid that market rate. Sure, there's variations in terms of your experience and your credentials and things like that, but I hear it again and again from people just saying, can I do that? Can I ask that? And my answer is absolutely, you can do that. You can ask for it. Okay. Ask for what will enable you to do your best work. You want to be confident, or at least act confidently, the old fake it until you make it. And you probably, for many of you, you are going to be having to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, and you're just going to have to do that. And if you keep doing that, you'll get better at it. You want to transition from women don't ask, the high cost of avoiding negotiation, to ask for it, how women can use the power of negotiation to get what they really want. I liked these two titles, and I actually recommend these. These are two really good resources. They're books written by Linda Babcock and Sarah Lashover. They're some of the first people to do in-depth research on women in negotiation, and the two books came out in 2007, 2009, respectively. Sarah Lashover has actually spoken here a couple times at Barnard. She's a very effective speaker, runs a good workshop. Some of you may even have attended the one back in January that the PLDC sponsored. So, but I think their titles say a lot. It's true, women don't ask, and their research shows very clearly that men are much more likely to ask for salary increases, professional training opportunities, changes to their job description, etc. Women tend to be more passive and to wait to be offered. And then their second book, Ask for It, How Women Can Use the Power of Negotiation. Again, that's what you want to transition to. If you're somebody who hasn't asked a lot, you want to make that transition to asking. So speaking of asking, let's see if there's any questions. Okay. What is a signing performance bonus? This is something that you can ask for before assuming the position. Yes, so some places will, let's go back to one of my examples. Let's say you were looking for 90 and you end up settling at 82,000, which is lower than you wanted. So what you could say is, I'm not thrilled about the 82,000. I understand your constraints. Do you have a signing, or is there a possibility of a signing or performance bonus? Signing bonus is basically, if you sign with us, if you agree to take the job, we'll give you $5,000 in your first paycheck or after 3 months or something like that. A performance bonus is general. If you perform to this standard, we'll give you, a bonus of this much, or it's usually left a little bit up in the end. A lot of places do a year-end bonus based on performance. And so it's just something to ask about if that's a possibility. You're not necessarily going to get them to write it down in stone, but it's a helpful thing to know. And then you have to be proactive once you're in the position. Make sure that you do come back to them after 3 months or 6 months or at the end of the year or the fiscal year and ask about bonuses and whether you're entitled to one, and be prepared to make the case that you are. Okay. What is an employment contract? Yeah, so sometimes the written offer is going to come in the form of a contract. I mean, a contract position usually implies a limited time. So they're hiring you for 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. Sometimes it's a temp to perm kind of thing. Sometimes it's simply they need somebody to come on board. It could lead to something more permanent, but it's a contracted position. An actual employment contract would be a written agreement between yourself and the employer that spells out things in all sorts of detail. Not a lot of positions tend to have that, in my experience. If it's a unionized position, you are agreeing to sort of the general contract that the union has with the employer. But a lot of you will be applying to non-union positions, in which case it's, what's the term, at will employment. And, you should look carefully. You should look at the HR site. You should look at the materials HR gives you when you are hired, and read the fine print and understand what your, sort of rights and responsibilities are in terms of that. Okay. All right, so that sums up negotiating, and as I've indicated several times, I'm open and available to working with you on your specific negotiation, whatever it involves. And like I said, sometimes I have alumni reach out to me just to get ready for their performance review, and to prepare for it and sort of have a strategy. Are you going to ask for a salary or title bump? And if that doesn't go your way, are you going to ask for some supplemental things as well? So. All right, so now I want to move to the second half of our presentation, which is ongoing professional development. So basically, you've got the job, and so you think, oh, I don't have to think about any of this stuff. I can put my resume away. I don't have to worry about interviewing, etc. And to a certain extent, that's true. And my advice always to people when they get the job, first of all, let me know. I love to hear about people getting a job. Sometimes they don't tell me. And it's always wonderful to hear that news. So first and foremost, email Christine, let her know you got a job. And then second, you want to learn to do your new job well. So give yourself time to settle in. You want to gain confidence, increase your value to the company or organization. So, take advantage, ask questions, get good at your new job. And you definitely want to make sure you understand the probation process if there is one. So even for non-union positions, there can be a 3-month or 6-month probationary period. Sometimes it just puts restrictions on things like vacation days, but other times it clearly spells out that if we're not happy with how you're doing these first couple of months, we can fire you with no explanation, no due process. So it's good to know that. I mean, this is not your first question to HR. Take a look at the material, see if that information's there. But if they don't spell that out, you might want to just clarify whether you're on probation or whether you've jumped right into regular employment. Once you're settled, though, you do want to continue to pay attention to your ongoing career development. All right. The goal is to position yourself for success, satisfaction, and future opportunities. So just because you're in a new job doesn't mean you stop thinking about the future, where this job could go, where else you might want to be. It's not constant. I don't want you to constantly be looking at the next opportunity down the road. I do want you to enjoy and focus on your work. Some of it, a lot of jobs nowadays are extremely demanding, steep learning curves, but I don't want you to completely forget about your career development. So what I'm going to outline is just a few suggestions for how to keep your overall long-term career development in mind as you continue to work in your new job. And we're going to use the same steps we followed in this webinar series as a guide. So just to refresh your memory, we started out 6 weeks ago looking at career exploration. And then we talked about resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn profile. Then we looked at networking online and in person, the job search, interviewing, and finally today we looked at negotiating. And my thesis here, if you will, is that these same 6 topics, these same 6 steps in your career development process continue to be relevant even when you're not actively searching for a new job. So here's some tips. Oops, but I have a question. Let me see. In my field, I often find annual renewable contracts really important to know when that renewal process starts each year and self-advocate. Oh, that's an excellent point. So, and again, this really varies by field, but all part of asking the right questions and looking at all those materials that HR gives you when you are first hired. So ongoing career exploration. We looked back at the beginning at self-assessment, and what I would say is you want to continue to reflect on what you most enjoy and are most skilled at. And your goal is to try and bring as much of that into your work as you can. So again, you don't walk in the first day and start making demands. I won't do this, I will do this. But it's good to stop every once in a while and say, oh, that was cool. I really enjoyed that project. It allowed me to do X, and I really like doing X. And maybe I can find a way to do that thing more, right? Often assessments, workshops, various professional developments are offered at work. Depending on the place, sometimes they're not taken very seriously, but I say if they hire someone to come in and do a Myers-Briggs, group session, or what are some of the other assessments? Conflict resolution styles. There's all sorts of instruments out there. There's all sorts of professional development opportunities. Go for it. It's at the very least, you'll get to know some of your coworkers and maybe get a little bit of insight into yourself and how the organization works and how you fit in. So I would take advantage of them. And do pull out, if you did take, let's say as a result of these webinars, you came to see me and you did your Myers-Briggs, you did a strong inventory, you did some of the online values and skills checklist. Pull those out from time to time and take a look and compare it to what you're actually doing. Just remind yourself of who you are and what's important to you, and is your job living up to it. A good time to do this is that if there is a performance review time, or if the year is ending, either the fiscal or calendar year, just make a note in your calendar to say, okay, let me do a little self-assessment, self-reflection. Sometimes you are required to do that as part of the performance review, but I'm saying even if you're not required to do it, it's not a bad time to sit and talk. You could talk to somebody, or you could write it down if you're more of a writer. Ongoing career exploration, aside from looking at yourself and continuing to think about what you love and what you are good at, you want to keep thinking, doing your workforce research. Keep an eye on your field as a whole. Keep up with your professional groups on LinkedIn. You join some of them, hopefully for networking purposes during your job search. Keep up with them. There's a new app actually. You can get LinkedIn on your phone, but you can get specifically LinkedIn groups on your phone. And I find for whatever reason, I'm more likely to click on that than I am on the daily emails that come. Probably because, I'll be sitting somewhere, I'll be bored, and the email will tell me there's a new discussion, and I'll flip over to the app because it's just more accessible than like clicking on the link, etc. So keep up with your professional groups. Use technology to help you do that easily. Professional journals, associations, and conferences. Sometimes you'll get a subscription break through your company or organization. Take advantage of that. You may be able to join an association. You may be able to attend a conference. And you want to consult ONET and the Occupational Outlook Handbook for related positions and fields. Either if you're looking to move up or you're not, or the position isn't what you hoped it would be, take a look at what the official websites say about it. And do ask your manager for advice and opportunities on professional and skills development. Okay. As I said, very often they have a budget line for professional development. People don't tend to ask about it, so ask, can't hurt to ask. Your resume and LinkedIn profile, can you just ignore them till your next job search? I'm here to tell you no. You don't have to look at them every day, but you have a new position. I would definitely hop on LinkedIn and add the new position. And I would also visit your master resume. Remember, that's your for your eyes only document that you keep, and add it. Add bullets, accomplishments, skills as your job progresses. So basically, you can just add your title and basic things, and then as your job progresses, if you work on a big project, if you introduce a new system, if you have any achievements, take a second to write that down and get it into it. It makes it a lot easier when you do have to quickly edit and update your resume for some reason or another. And again, performance review is a good time to do this, or some other annual event. Like I said, could be the end of the fiscal year, could be the end of the calendar year when you have a little bit of time, hopefully. And keep a file, either paper or electronic, of if you're asked to write a biography, if you get a performance review, if somebody writes something if you have to write something for a publication to use for future cover letters. It's just a great resource. If your manager sends you an email praising you on something you've done, print it out or save a PDF of it in your file so that you can add that to a cover letter or add that to your LinkedIn summary. Okay. Ongoing networking online. Do continue to add contacts to LinkedIn and your electronic address book. You might not be doing this as frequently if you're not actively looking for a position, but I'd still, the same way I told you to make LinkedIn part of your routine when you're looking for a job or exploring new opportunities, I would still make LinkedIn part of your routine. It might not be as often, you might not be there every day or even every week, it might be once a month, but when you do hop on LinkedIn, add contacts, add some of the new people you're working with, new people you've met. And circle back to existing contacts if you hear about new jobs, promotions, or if you see an article or an event of interest. You want to keep those connections up because you could need them again when you're looking for a job. You could be in a position to help them out, or they simply could help in your professional development. They might let you know about an opportunity to speak or give a presentation or go to a conference. And continue to participate in discussion groups and join new groups as you become aware of them. Now that you are in a position, you're not the explorer, you're not the novice, maybe you're a little more seasoned and you can share some information with other people. Ongoing network in person. I was at a networking presentation once where the person declared you should never eat lunch alone. You should have lunch with someone every day. So to me, that didn't sound that appealing, probably because I spend my entire day talking to people. And so I actually like sometimes to eat lunch alone and regroup a little. But it's not a bad concept because lunch is an opportunity, obviously, to be social and to connect with people. So if every day seems like too much, think about once a week setting up a lunch, or once a month, depending on your level of social need. When you join an organization, often new colleagues will invite you to join them for lunch, or for after work drinks, or other social events. And if you're able to, say yes. It's a good opportunity to get to know people, and in turn, as new people come on board, you can return the favor. It's a good opportunity to sort of get to know people, what they've done before, and help give them a sense of the new place. And do try to connect in person with colleagues that you communicate with frequently by email or phone. Even at a place like Barnard, which isn't the hugest place, it is possible in this day and age to never lay eyes on someone, or never even speak to them on the phone, but have a complete email conversation. So every once in a while, I try, for instance, if I'm walking across campus to a meeting or to go drop something off, I will pop my head in and say hello or introduce myself in person to someone, perhaps in purchasing that I've been corresponding with, or whatever. We all are getting more and more used to having phone only, or email only, online only relationships with people, but seeing them in person, taking a few minutes to say hello, can often be helpful. And an ongoing network. Another couple of ideas for how you can continue to network: informal lunch groups. I got this idea actually from some of my colleagues at Barnard. There's a couple of examples at Barnard. I actually don't know if these exist, because some of these people have moved on, but there used to be a knitting group, not just knitting. There was just people who, liked to do, there were probably crocheters and quilters, etc. And they would meet once a week in Dorothy Denberg's office. Some of you will remember Dorothy Denberg, who was dean of the college for many years and connected with a lot of you over the years. And they would knit, and she was dean of the college, and the former head of the budget was in this group. So you can bet that in addition to knitting and chit chat and gossip, that there was also some substantive information being passed around. So very powerful networking. And this might still exist. There's a fair number of administrators here at Barnard who have young kids, and they started a group a couple years ago. So, we're talking about infant to toddler to, sort of early elementary years. And they talk, they get together once a month, and, they're mostly talking about work-life balance. But again, they also banded together and pushed Barnard hard to create private spaces for women who were nursing and needed to pump. So it really has been an effective group, in addition to both advocacy and support. So think about colleagues that you might have something in common with. Doesn't have to be crafting or family issues necessarily, but there might be something you have in common, and you could start an informal lunch group. Another idea that I got from a colleague here at Barnard is to set up an informational interview with someone within the organization. If you're interested in another aspect of the job, it might not be a bad idea to let her or him know that you're interested in moving over to a different area. There might not be an opening. They may not, think you're a great fit, but it can't hurt to learn a little bit more. Okay. I see I have a question. Let me see. So the question is, should you wait until you pass your probationary period before adding a position on your resume or LinkedIn? I guess you could. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to literally go the day you get hired or the day you start to do that. And it could be, especially if it's a stretch position for you, or if you have concerns about a difficult manager or something, it might be good to wait. And then once you're settled past the probationary, you're pretty sure you're going to be staying there, then you could go ahead and put it on. It's a good question. Okay. And then I forgot, I had a final point about this informational interview. This is also another opportunity to get their perspective on the organization as a whole, or on the field in general. So my friend who did this was sort of on the curriculum side of things, and she was actually getting more and more interested in the operational side, things like budgeting and things like that. So she actually had a really fruitful conversation with one of the VPs in finance, just about how that works, how that world works in higher ed. So, okay. Ongoing job search. Should you be looking for a job when you already have one, or you just started one? Not really, but it does not hurt. And I would in fact suggest that you take an occasional but regular look at what's out there. Once a week, once a month, once every 6 months. So you could just go back to your job boards, especially niche sites for your field, just to see what's going on. And you certainly could continue to occasionally check the websites of companies or organizations that you admire, your dream company, your dream organization. You never know what might come up. And then on the other hand, opportunities might come to you via connection or a headhunter or recruiter. And I would follow up at least through the preliminary stages, even if you're happy where you are. I think this can be instructive in terms of salary, in terms of how valuable you're considered. It just helps you keep in perspective. And it doesn't hurt from time to time to say, am I happy here? Could I be happier somewhere else? You don't want to be jumping from job to job, but it also doesn't hurt to think about what's out there. Improving your interview skills, something we could always use. Especially as you start somewhere new, you're going to be getting, meeting a lot of people. Oh, what do you do? Where do you come from? Keep using and refining your 30-second pitch. And especially if you're in a job where you're taking on new responsibilities, you want to integrate that, So then a few months later, you go to a cocktail party and somebody says, oh, what do you do? And now you've got a new job and you can describe it a little bit differently than how you were describing yourself during the interview process. Volunteer to be on interview committees. You can learn a lot about how the process works by being on the other side. I definitely learned a lot of what I know about how interviewing works by just being on various committees. And, these don't have to be the big high-powered, executive searches, although that, if you're invited to be on one of those, by all means, go for it. But routinely here at Barnard, we'll be interviewing candidates for our department, or sometimes another department will ask one of us to sit in just to give our perspective, so that it doesn't become too insular. Great opportunity. It can be a little bit time consuming, especially those big long processes, but it's very, very instructive. And you want to accept public speaking invitations and take classes or workshops to improve these skills. So again, sometimes a company will bring in someone to work on public speaking. Take advantage of that. You might want to look to outside resources. If you feel like this is a weakness, it's a really great thing it's one of those skills, sometime, somewhere, sometime, often, frequently. If you can learn to be a better presenter, this is only going to help you, not just in interviews down the road, but just in general. Even in something as simple as a meeting, if you learn how to present yourself better, this can be really helpful, right? And then improving your negotiating skills. You want to continue gathering salary information as opportunities arise. And as you might have been able to tell, I'm a big advocate for trying to change the culture around talking about money. We, as I said, some companies actively or subtly try and discourage this information. I don't think that's good for the worker, all right? I think the more we know about what's being paid, the better negotiators we're going to be, the better chance we have of being paid what we're worth. And so I encourage you, where possible, to talk to people about money. You have to be careful, you have to use your discretion, but go for it. And as we mentioned earlier, ask for a salary increase or other perks at your annual review. So whatever the system is at your workplace, take advantage of it. And if there is no existing system, or if your manager is very casual about this, try and be proactive, get these conversations started so that you are being considered. Okay. All right, I've got a couple, actually I'm almost at the end, so let me finish up and then I'll take the questions at the end. So final thoughts. Job factors you have the most control over are your performance and your professional development. Not a very long list, but if you think about it, I had a professor down at NYU where I did my career counseling certificate, and I thought this was a great list. You can control your performance, you can control your professional development, and then there's a whole bunch of things you have less or no control over. This includes your title and job description. This could change on a dime, all right, according to your manager or according to the needs of the company. Your manager, I've heard quite a few stories. You get hired by one manager and 3 weeks later, 3 months later, a year later, they leave. They move for another opportunity and now you have a new one. Your company can be bought or sold or change hands or expand. The industry and the economy can change. Certainly, so many of us are living through, so many industries are just undergoing a sea change. due to digitalization, due to the Great Recession and the slow recovery from it. There's a lot of change going on out there. We don't individually have a lot of power over that. The reason I'm outlining this is if you make career development an ongoing part of your professional life, you'll be in a better position when the unexpected happens. So in other words, if you pay attention to the job factors you do have some control over, pay attention to your performance, pay attention to your professional development, adding skills, getting better at what you do. If you pay attention to that, then if something you can't control happens, you're in a better position. You get a new manager and they're awful and you really would like to leave. Now you're in a better position to leave because you went to that conference, you learned how to do this new thing. It puts you in a stronger position for your next company. Your company gets sold, you get laid off, you know, it just, you want to keep yourself in a good position. And I'm focusing on the negative, but on the positive side, if an opportunity comes along at the same organization or a different organization, a promotion, you want to be in a position to take advantage of that and feel comfortable with that. The goal is to give yourself options. That's all I want. I want you to give yourself options so that when something happens, good or bad, you don't feel trapped. You feel like you'll be able to, you know, take advantage and or move on. Okay. So quickly, next steps. As I've encouraged you throughout, call for an appointment with me if you'd like to discuss the specifics of your situation. The office number is here, and I'm in on Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And you can come see me in person, via phone, or via Skype. And I just want to emphasize the calling, all right? I keep getting lovely emails from you, and although I like getting the emails, there's nothing less efficient than trying to set up an appointment by email. We go back and forth. How about this day? How about that day? So just be efficient. Call the main desk. They've got my schedule. You have your schedule. Get on my appointment book, on my appointment calendar, and I look forward to talking to you as soon as possible. There's an on-campus workshop series covering these same topics. It runs spring and fall. I'll be setting the dates in the next week or so. I generally do mid-April to late May. So if you are in the New York area and would like to go back over some of this in person, by all means come, but also tell your fellow alumni who might be interested. And this webinar series I repeat in the summer and winter. So again, if you missed any of them or if you have a new situation, feel free to sign up again. They continue to be free. PowerPoints and webinars are archived. I'll be getting hopefully last week's and today's up by tomorrow at the latest. And definitely keep in touch if you've got an idea, if you've got a quick question, and if you have any updates on your job search or career change, I'd love to hear about it. And there's my email. So questions. Let me go back. Okay. Should you wait until you, okay, good. I already did that one. Have to leave a bit early, but wanted to say thank you. Oh, you're very welcome. All right, any other final questions, final thoughts anyone would like to share? I'm happy to read them out. I have another thank you. Great series, thank you. Okay, I guess we'll leave that there because I think we're a few minutes past 1 o'clock. It's been a pleasure to speak into the void, but know that you are all out there listening and asking questions and following up with emails and appointments. So good luck in your job search, good luck in your career exploration, and please take advantage of myself and our other resources here at Barnard. Take good care.